Your Excellency, Dr. William Ruto, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, Your Excellency, Professor Kindiki, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Chief Justices Emeritus, and our visiting Chief Justices, Your Excellency, Prime Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Koome and Mudavadi. Allow me also to acknowledge the protocol that has been set and abide by it, and recognize my brother and sister judges from the Supreme Court, from all the courts, and all the visiting justices, and our esteemed members of the Judicial Service Commission, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Supreme Court of Kenya, I am most delighted to welcome you all to this conference as we commemorate 12 years since the establishment of the Supreme Court of Kenya. Allow me to particularly single out for special mention and recognition my brother and sister Chief Justices and judges from other jurisdictions who have traveled from across the continent and the world to join us for this conference. Let us appreciate our esteemed guests. The theme of the conference, reflecting and introspecting on the Supreme Court of Kenya's jurisprudence, 12 years of defending the Constitution, captures the dual purpose of our conference, which is to celebrate the milestones we have achieved while critically examining the journey we continue to chart as Kenya's apex court and the ongoing commitment to uphold justice, to uphold constitutionalism, and to uphold the rule of law. At the heart of this conference is the idea that institutions matter. Institutions are the anchors of our democratic aspirations. The establishment of the Supreme Court as the ultimate interpreter and guardian of the Constitution embodies the expectation that the Supreme Court provides stability, certainty, and predictability in resolving the inevitable conflicts that arise within our society. Therefore, we are affirming the idea that our future lies in building strong and robust institutions that will serve as the catalysts for the national progress and development. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, over the past 12 years, the Supreme Court has played a transformative role in shaping both Kenya's jurisprudence and shaping our country's socio-political development. This court's landmark judgments have influenced the daily lives of Kenyans while reinforcing the core principles of our democracy. Through hearing and determining 4 presidential election petitions over the last 3 election cycles, the court has set critical benchmarks for conducting free, fair, and transparent elections. Likewise, through the landmark advisory opinions on devolution and the relationship between the bicameral houses of parliament, the Supreme Court has developed guiding frameworks that clarify interactions between the National Assembly and the Senate, reinforcing devolution as a cornerstone of our transformative Constitution. Furthermore, in defining the parameters for constitutional amendments in the BBI case and establishing principles of public participation in the BAT and recently in the Finance Act cases, the court's jurisprudence has strengthened the democratic foundations of governance and harmonizing the judiciary's benchmark on the areas of public participation that still requires parliamentary action. The court's decisions have also directly addressed issues of land rights, human rights, social and economic justice, and family law. In the same vein, the courts have addressed housing rights jurisprudence in the Me Too Bell cases, which reflects the court's commitment to socioeconomic rights. The courts has set jurisprudence guiding the families on how to uphold the family as the cornerstone of our society. In this and countless other judgments, the Supreme Court has affirmed its role as a transformative agent in the society. Despite the inevitable pitfalls of perception or capture that come as a result of the court's invitation to address political questions, the court's jurisprudence has purposefully harnessed the Constitution as a powerful tool to promote the well-being of individuals and driving societal transformation for the common good. Notably, the decisions of the Supreme Court of Kenya have garnered significant respect and citation across the region and beyond. This recognition in the global legal community underscores the court's maturity into a respected institution whose well-reasoned judgments contribute to the evolving discourse on the law and justice worldwide. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the journey of the Supreme Court has not been without challenges, as explained by the Honorable Lady Justice Joki Ndongo. But as we strive to deepen jurisprudence and protect the Constitution, the court is often called to balance divergent interests and expectations while upholding the law. It is important to appreciate that the Supreme Court's jurisdiction, to a large extent, has a political dimension, given that this court handles matters touching on governance, the exercise of political power, and presidential election petitions. The court inevitably gets drawn into disputes relating to the exercise of a political mandate. And this has led to the court being subjected to political verification and being a target of political rhetoric over the past 3 electoral cycles. I want to take this opportunity to assure Kenyans that in the discharge of our mandate, we do not get drawn into making political decisions. We look for legal solutions for political disputes. The judges are politically neutral and are concerned with only determining the legal and evidential issues before the court, irrespective of their political ramifications. Going back to the history that informed the jurisdiction vested in the Supreme Court, particularly the exclusive jurisdiction to hear and determine presidential election disputes, there is need to sustain public confidence and trust in the Supreme Court. Without a court to turn to for resolving political disputes, our country will risk being left without an institution to arbitrate and resolve these disputes that involve politics and governance. And these disputes have the potential to tear down the country. I therefore urge political players and other Kenyans to reinforce and build public confidence in the work of the judiciary and the Supreme Court. Recently, I have been reflecting on the role of the three arms of government and the need for each arm to shield the other from taking on mandates that are separated by the Constitution, so that we can truly live by the spirit and principle of separation of power. When courts are invited to deal with political questions presented in a legal nature, there is an inevitable risk of being drawn into perceptions that plague political play. Although this is an Anglo-Saxon problem, as we see in jurisdictions that require some political jurisdiction from their apex courts, we must, and indeed we do, approach every issue with legal lens. It is important that political institutions exhaust all political solutions and only turn to courts as a matter of last resort. And when I look back at what happened to us in 2007, when we were visited by post-election violence, when I look at what happened in 2017 and also 2022, the maandamano, and the creation of the nusu mukate or half-loaf bread government, the handshake government, and now the broad-based government, I always wondered, had we sat down under our provisions of Article 159 to reason together and resolve the dispute before we went into fighting each other, we would have been very far as a country. So let us embrace the provisions of 159 and do NDR, or what we are calling court annexed mediation or alternative justice system, to resolve the disputes that visit us, especially politically. We have resolved those 3 cycles of disputes as the Supreme Court, but the answer given by the Supreme Court is not what carried the day. What happened at the table through negotiations in those arrangements, including the creation of the broad-based government after the dispute in 2022 elections, is testament that political solutions to political problems is possible. Although courts remain ready to delve into complex legal issues arising out of political processes, we must require all institutions to exhaust constitutional alternative dispute resolution avenues to strengthen the cohesion in our society. In today's rapidly evolving world, new dynamics continue to reshape the legal, political, and social landscapes in which we operate. Challenges such as deepening social inequality, the urgent realities of climate change, political competition, which introduce complex issues that demand careful navigation and thoughtful judicial responses. The advent of emerging technologies also bring both opportunities and risk, particularly in the realm of information, misinformation, and disinformation, especially as they proliferate through social media and have the potential to influence public opinion, disrupt democratic processes, and even affect judicial independence. For the Supreme Court to continue fulfilling our mandate effectively, close interinstitutional and collaboration and support are vital. Upholding the rule of law and protecting constitutional rights is a collective responsibility that calls for cooperation and respect among the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, and other state agencies. I therefore call on collaborative relationship that will strengthen our resilience of our legal system and allow the Supreme Court and the wider judiciary to serve as a true pillar of justice. As an institution of this stature, we rely on the support we receive from the members of the public. Through their confidence, we are also able to serve the Kenyans while aware that the mandate we exercise comes from them. Through this conference, we are also honoring the work of distinguished men and women, justices past and present, who have contributed to building the jurisprudence of this court. Each justice, as Justice Joki has enumerated, has shown that the tremendous responsibility of safeguarding the Constitution and ensuring that justice is served without fear, favor, or prejudice. I can say it publicly that the justices of the Supreme Court are men and women committed to upholding the values and principles of our Constitution. This commitment is not merely rhetorical. It is a responsibility that each of them carries, and one that we do not take lightly. Their work is often solitary and demanding, yet they consistently uphold their judicial oath and do so with honor and integrity. I therefore wish to introduce my esteemed colleagues serving on the Supreme Court bench, the Honorable Justice Philomena Mwiru, who is the Vice President of the court, the Honorable Mr. Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, the Honorable Justice Mokin Wanjara, the Honorable Justice Joaquin Dungu, the Honorable Justice Isaac Renaura, and the Honorable Justice William Ouko. I am also privileged to introduce past justices of the courts, led by our Chief Justice, retired Justice Professor Willy Mutunga, the first president of the court. The Honorable retired Justice David Maraga, the second president of the court. Honorable retired Justice Dr. Nancy Mbalasa, the first vice president of the court. I introduce in absentia the retired Justice Kaupana Lawo, the second vice president of the court, the Honorable retired Justice Dr. Philip Tunoi, and the Honorable retired Justice Professor J.B. Ojuang. It is these men and women, the current and the former justices of the court, whose jurisprudential contributions have been instrumental in building a legacy of justice and constitutional fidelity that is associated with the Supreme Court of Kenya. Supporting these justices are the registrar, deputy registrars, law clerks, and numerous court staff, both past and present, who make the court's work possible. Their efforts behind the scenes are indispensable, for they ensure that the Supreme Court can fulfill its mandate to the highest standard. To all of you, asanteni sana. And in conclusion, as we celebrate 12 years of the Supreme Court's work and impact, we are conscious that the road ahead requires our renewed vigor, our unity of purpose, and a deep-seated commitment to justice. I take this opportunity to assure Kenyans and all of you present in this conference that the Supreme Court of Kenya will stand rock solid as a constant guardian of the Constitution and the rule of law in changing times. The court will continue to be a beacon of justice, a champion of constitutionalism, and a defender of the rule of law going forward. I encourage each one of you to engage fully in the sessions that follow, contribute your insights, because we are here to learn, so that we can collectively shape the future of the Supreme Court of Kenya. I thank you once again for being part of this holistic conference, and I look forward to a very, very vibrant conference. And with those remarks, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, it is my honor, a very, very singular honor, for me to invite His Excellency the Deputy President, Honorable Professor Kithure Kindiki, to come and give his remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. Please, let's take our seats. Mr. Deputy President, Your Ladyship, Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya and President of the Supreme Court, Prime Cabinet Secretary, DCJ, our Attorney General, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Justices of the Supreme Court, Justice William Mutunga, Chief Justice Emeritus, Justice Maraka, Chief Justice Emeritus, Madam Nancy Barasa, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Jambo. I'm truly happy to be here this morning. I know you have convened this meeting, as was explained to us, to reflect about 12 years and to listen to stakeholders, people who are affected by your decisions, people who, in one way or another, become part of the court system. And unlike Sakaja, who has never been a client at the Supreme Court, I am a very consistent client at the Supreme Court. I have been brought before Chief Justice Mutunga. I have been brought before Chief Justice Maraga. I was the other day before Chief Justice Koome. And as things would be, sometimes I get favorable judgment, sometimes I don't. But in all cases, I have abided by what the decisions of the Supreme Court were. And therefore, it was, if there was a person to, as a stakeholder, to give an assessment, I think I qualify to be among the few people who have been before the Supreme Court many times. The Chief Justice referred to the 4 presidential elections that have been adjudicated by the Supreme Court. In all the 4, I have been a client. I was in there. And therefore, it is an honor for me to join you in commemorating 12 years since the establishment of Kenya's Supreme Court, an iconic institution that, along with devolution and the Bill of Rights, stands as one of the most transformative innovations in our progressive 2010 Constitution. As Kenya's apex judicial body, the Supreme Court is entrusted with the sacrosanct mandate to uphold and promote the purpose and principles of our constitutional order. By virtue of its unique complement of exclusive, original, appellate, and advisory jurisdictions, it possesses the necessary authority to arbitrate, to advise, and to guide the institutions of our republic as they perform their roles of giving full expression to the will of the people as inscribed in our Constitution. The Supreme Court, therefore, serves a powerful symbolic role as the highest representation of the values and institutions of justice in our land and the fulfillment of people's determined quest for a judiciary grounded in inclusivity, fairness, justice, and constitutionalism. It was designed not merely to interpret law, but also to resolutely underwrite and defend justice for all Kenyans. 14 years after the promulgation of the Constitution, we continue on the journey of implementing the vision for a stable, secure, prosperous, open, and democratic society grounded in freedom, justice, and the rule of law. And central to this monumental endeavor is the Supreme Court, which has guided the judiciary in orienting the national ideology towards the legitimate pursuit of every aspiration and resisting the temptation to compromise our values for the illusion of political expediency, however well-meaning. 12 years after its establishment, it is difficult for us to imagine how the Republic of Kenya existed for many decades without a Supreme Court. It has helped us reject the many false dichotomies that once constrained our policies and politics, including the belief that freedom must be sacrificed for security and that democracy and stability are mutually exclusive, or that sustainable development is the monopoly of the centralized government. You've heard Sakaja speak very eloquently about what the Supreme Court has done on matters devolution. It is therefore fitting that this conference invites us to reflect on the Supreme Court's jurisprudence over the past 12 years. In doing so, we recognize both successes and areas for critique as we consider the court's evolution, its impact on Kenya's constitutional landscape, and its commitment to protecting the rights and aspirations of all Kenyans. True to the court's philosophy, bold honesty is the best policy, and this occasion calls us to reflect candidly on its journey, progress, challenges, and impact. To appreciate the achievement represented by the Supreme Court's creation, we must revisit the hard lessons of the 2007 presidential election crisis. That crisis exposed deep-seated systemic failures and a profound erosion of public trust in our electoral and judicial processes, fracturing the people's trust in the rule of law. Consequently, a disputed election outcome triggered underlying conflicts that nearly drove the nation to the brink of almost total collapse. It was realized then that rebuilding trust and restoring faith in the rule of law was indispensable, and that a credible, authoritative mechanism for resolving presidential election disputes was the only way to prevent elections from threatening rather than renewing our nationhood. The 2010 Constitution, therefore, established the Supreme Court as a unique institution with hybrid jurisdiction, symbolizing its special status. Its exclusive original jurisdiction over presidential election disputes is a legacy of the 2000 never again moment. Its hybrid appellate jurisdiction, which depends on the existence of a unique issue deserving authoritative determination by the court, aims to restore confidence in the judiciary, while its advisory mandate enables state organs and county governments to seek authoritative guidance on best practice for policy formulation and also policy implementation. The body of work that the Supreme Court has developed over the course of the 12 years is expansive, meaningful, and authoritative. It would be tedious for me to dissect all of the outputs today, and in any event, my very able Attorney General is here to do that for me at a later occasion. Suffice it to say, the court's jurisprudence demonstrates its capacity to address complex issues, clarify the law, stabilize policy, and meet the expectations of the people of Kenya. There is no doubt that the Supreme Court has not been short of critics during the past 12 years. Its decisions have been and will be debated and dissected vigorously, and in a number of cases, disagreements will linger for long. Nevertheless, it would be unduly pessimistic to overlook the court's clear efforts to interpret the Constitution with wisdom, reinforcing pillars of democracy, justice, equality, freedom, good governance, accountability, and the rule of law in a very robust way with immense clarity. Sometimes citizens, including myself agree. Sometimes we don't. But we are bound to respect. It has pronounced itself on a broad range of pertinent issues across legal landscape, and in so doing, entrenched certain principles and values as non-negotiable procedural and substantive elements of good policy. It is because the court has been emphatic in its dispositions and firm in its guidance of subordinate courts that Kenyans are confident that their rights are intact and due process is indispensable. In turn, this confidence has fostered courage, openness, and vigor in our society, values the Constitution envisioned for the Supreme Court and the judiciary in terms of being faithful to what the Constitution expected of the judiciary. We can confidently say you have passed the mark. It is therefore quite fair to say that the court has stood as a faithful custodian of our Constitution, a defender of fundamental rights, and a pillar of democracy. Its sustained capacity to resolve complex constitutional matters remains critical to our nation's institutional vitality now and going into the future. Even as we celebrate the court's achievements, we must recognize that there remains some way to go for us to reach the Constitution's promised land, that the pursuit of justice is unending, and that as long as we are free and a democratic nation, competition and disagreement will require resolution. And therefore, you must always be present, alive, with clarity to resolve. The Supreme Court must continue to evolve, maintain ideological clarity, intellectual rigor, and remain connected to the lived experiences of all Kenyans. A forward-thinking, innovative, and responsive court is essential for addressing the complex challenges of our time. Allow me to just say something in that context, especially on the paragraph I've just elaborated, that we live in a very dynamic world. And it's not always that I find an occasion where I am before the Chief Justice, DCJ, all the justices of the Supreme Court. And as a citizen, to try and, speak to some of the issues that sometimes, engage my mind. And one of the issues that I would want to say is, in this complex and dynamic space, and as was said very ably by the Chief Justice, where you have social media, you have, all manner of pressures, sometimes from anonymous people, anonymous, characters, and let me not abuse it. People, anonymous, people who nobody knows what is their push. What happens, for example, with a government that has been elected on the basis of a manifesto? What is the place of a manifesto? A program that has been voted for by millions of Kenyans alongside a candidate and a party. What weight does the court put whenever there is a challenge on a manifesto? I would want to invite the court to think about it. How do you respond to litigants, individuals, that challenge a policy and a manifesto position canvassed among the citizens of Kenya, voted by the people of Kenya? And how do we use the place of manifesto to remove politics of personalities and instead try to, consolidate the place of politics that is around a program, a policy, an agenda? How does the court help us to consolidate the place of getting away politics from being about personalities, or sometimes even about ethnicity, and taking it to the realm of issues, policies, programs? And how do we work together to make sure that we consolidate the place of a development trajectory, a program, a national program, backstopped by the people of Kenya through an election and rolled out by an elected government? And sometimes, as was said again by my younger brother Sakaja, if you have a program canvassed by a political party, a government, being rolled out, and sometimes it's not populist. Sometimes, as politicians, you have to balance between being popular and doing the right thing. Sometimes they don't go together. And then you sacrifice your political capital to do the right thing. But then the court on the other side decides to be popular and undermine the agenda that you have. And allow me, Madam Chief Justice, to appear before you on this matter. And I hope I am not abusing the court process, on this matter. I'm just trying to, in a very simple way, to put my thoughts across so that, maybe the court can apply its mind to it and help us, chart this course as Kenyans. Because it's me today, it's somebody else tomorrow, it's the next person the next day. And we all must think about this. So that particular matter is sometimes is a matter that informs some of the things that we do. And I am a layman, but we're told that the court also makes decisions sometimes they have to factor in public interest. Where does public interest, populism, playing to the gallery, where is that? You know, how do we nuance it so that it is managed properly and we don't drop the ball? So this is just thoughts, and I'm really happy that Madam Chief Justice has said it clearly that we need to consult more, you know, as institutions. What has become clear during the course of constitutional implementation and in the life of the Supreme Court is that notwithstanding the principle of separation of powers and the need for checks and balances, cooperation between organs of government and among state institutions is necessary, is also desirable, and this is for the promotion of national interest and constitutionalism. And that brings me again to the matter that was canvassed by my deputy here. My sister Njoki spoke to it and said, we need independence, we need to avoid overreach and interference. You know? Overreach and interference, you know, that kind of thing. Now, we must be careful as the executive to avoid overreach and interference. Because we always talk about judicial independence. And it's a fundamental principle of our Constitution. And there is a remedy for executive overreach, because the judiciary will do something about it. But what happens when we have judicial overreach and judicial independence, judicial interference? Who will help us to resolve it? You know, I know this, and I hope I'm not making difficult things here. I'm just asking myself as a layman, and maybe I now have a good deputy, a professor. Maybe he'll help educate me when we have some time. But again, I would really want to ask ourselves, and so that as we restrain ourselves as the executive, not to interfere, not to overreach on matters that are in the purview of the judiciary or other arms of government for that matter, I think there is an equally very high responsibility on the part of the judiciary to restrain itself, and I think the Chief Justice here said so, to restrain itself on matters that are in the purview of other arms of government, so that we can have the committee of working together and the interdependence while respecting our independence or the independence of other arms of government. Such moments are rare, you know, when you have the ears of the judiciary. I think I have said the three things that I really wanted, just as a citizen, to, you know, juggle the minds of our judicial leaders and judicial officers, so that we can work together in this space. Effective collaboration, this is what I'm talking about, in the national interest. And And you heard my deputy say, you know, there is public interest, which sometimes is about maybe what the social media has said. What the social media has said, is it public interest? What is it? You know, we need to, there must be a balance. And then there is national interest. These are propositions that we need to think about so that we can carry it along in our jurisprudence and also in our life as a nation. No single institution or organ is entire of itself or viable in isolation. I'm encouraged by the increased confidence with which various arms of government are exploring areas of partnership and collaboration. And by so doing, we are breaking long-standing barriers to unlock the power of institutional synergy. There's a lot that we can achieve through institutional synergy, finding ways that we can make all the institutions work. And I agree with the Chief Justice that we must build strong institutions that can withstand even weaknesses of individuals. That sometimes, because we are human, sometimes individuals may be weak, but if you have strong institutions, they can even carry weak people across or stop tyrants also. You know, strong institutions can stop rogue people from also taking advantage of the system. And as we have consistently and repeatedly demonstrated, such partnerships are beneficial when pursued transparently and in public interest. Through this approach, the executive has found opportunity to engage the legislature and judiciary over the national budget, and also to support the expansion of judiciary's infrastructure, among other consultative endeavors. And today morning we had a conversation with the Chief Justice and the leadership of the judiciary on some of the aspects of modernization of our judiciary. And I must say, with a lot of clarity, that the judiciary has been phenomenal in its application of technology to deliver on its mandate. They have done a very commendable job. That e-filing and making sure that even decisions can be made online has really enhanced the efficiency of the judiciary. And the rest of government need to come along. I hope
it's the Constitution by nearly 8 decades, and today that is 93 years ago. The building is nearly a century old, and its architecture does not serve the present needs of the Supreme Court. Yes, it is majestic and externally imposing, but its internal design is far from being functionally adequate. The building does not embody the gravitas of the role of the Supreme Court as envisaged in the Constitution. Your Excellency, no one should leave this meeting with the impression that we want a new building because of the infrastructural developments that we are seeing in the other arms of government, such as the recently completed Bunge Towers, which is next door, or the refurbishment of the old chamber in Parliament to house the Senate, but rather, this is a proposal that stems from a genuine need to modernize our judicial infrastructure. For the last 15 years, we have concentrated our infrastructural development in the outlying and marginalized areas, but time has come to direct our attention to the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Kenya Judiciary Academy, which have no proper home at all. We appreciate the high-level discussions that were led by Your Excellency this morning to the effect that we should have an engagement between the judiciary, executive, and the county government of Nairobi on this issue. Over the past decade, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, over the past decade, the judiciary has received only 50% of its necessary funding, which has adversely affected its operations. Supporting the judiciary as a public good is crucial, and it plays a vital role in protecting individual rights, promoting economic stability, and maintaining a fair and orderly society. Ensuring adequate funding for the judiciary ultimately benefits everyone and strengthens the foundation of a healthy democracy. We want to change the philosophy that underpins budget allocations to the judiciary so that it is based on the number of judges or cases or the justice needs instead of an artificial or incremental basis. We need to introduce some science and empiricism in financing judiciary needs. Despite the challenges that we continue to grapple with, I take pride in the excellent support that the court's registry has provided to the judges since the court began its operations. The registry at the Supreme Court has successfully adopted technology in its processes, including e-filing, and has expanded its reach to 3 locations through sub-registries, and therefore enhancing convenience for court users. As we celebrate these milestones today, let us renew our commitment to justice and progress. In closing, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to several key contributors to our celebration today. First is to our esteemed judges of the Supreme Court who have served since 2011, and the judges who are currently serving in the court, led by the Honorable Chief Justice as President of the Court and the Honorable Deputy Chief Justice as Vice President of the Court, for their vision in shaping our journey and paving the way for this momentous 12th anniversary. Secondly, to Honorable Lady Justice Njoki Ndung'u and Honorable Justice Isaac Lenaola, whose co-leadership of the organizing committee has been instrumental in bringing this event to life with such finesse. Thirdly, I recognize the dedicated members of the organizing committee whose unwavering support and meticulous attention to detail have ensured the success of our gathering today. To Honorable Letitia Wachira, Registrar of the Supreme Court, whose tireless efforts and commitment have transformed our vision into reality, making this celebration not just an event, but a memorable occasion. To our various registrars, directors, whose collaborative and relentless work behind the scenes helped to make this event a reality. To all the hard-working members of staff at the Supreme Court, the protocol team, media, transport, security, and all staff whose dedication and professionalism shine brightly in all that we do. And finally, to our generous development partners, whose steadfast support has been a cornerstone in strengthening the court's capabilities and enhancing our service delivery. I invite us now to join me in applauding all our judges of the Supreme Court, the President and Vice President of the Court, the Registrar, members of the Organizing Committee, and all that I have mentioned above for their contribution and dedication. To all our esteemed visitors, we extend a warm welcome. Please feel free to experience the renowned Kenyan hospitality that we take pride in, enjoy your time with us. Thank you all for your commitment and passion as we move forward together, united by a shared purpose and a bold vision for the future. Let us continue to champion justice and uphold the values that define us. Asanteni sana.
Another round of applause for Honorable Mokaya. She's finished her statement with hospitality, so allow me, Your Excellency, with your permission, to now call on the Governor, Nairobi County, Honorable Johnson Sakaja, who's the host governor, to make a few remarks. Tumpigie makofi akija tafadhali. Karibu.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, your President of the Republic of Kenya, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. I'm also happy to be the first governor to refer to you as such, as the newly minted Deputy President, Honorable Chief Justice, and all judges of the Supreme Court. Allow me to also acknowledge the protocol already established. Indeed, we're here to celebrate our judiciary and the Supreme Court. The number of years that we've had the Supreme Court, it has been a symbol of stability for our country. Your Excellency, I have noted the remarks by the registrar outlining the history of this building and of this area we call Government Square. On Friday, it was very beautiful to see during the swearing in of our Deputy President how the land next to us in Government Square brings together all the arms of government. Your Excellency, the Speakers of Parliament walked across from the chambers. The Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice walked across from this building. The Deputy President walked across from Harambee House, signaling the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And the Governor of Nairobi also walked across from City Hall, symbolizing devolution. Your Excellency, it is not just on Friday. This entire area has a history, and it began as a church. In 1903, where we have parliament buildings today, there was St. Stephen's Church. And it started as a wooden and tin structure. It was called the Tin Tabernacle. From 1903 until 1950, when the Tin Tabernacle moved, because at that point, the Africans were moved to Jogoo Road, to what we have as St. Stephen's, and the Europeans moved to what we call All Saints Cathedral. But before that, in 1930, this building was put up as the first symbol of government authority around here. After we had the the judiciary building here in 1935, City Hall was built right next. So everyone else became a visitor after. Thereafter, in 1954, after the Tin Tabernacle had moved to Jogoo Road, is when Parliament building was put up, Mheshimiwa Kimani Ichung'wah. So you're our visitors. Between City Hall and the judiciary, we want to welcome you to Government Square. And then, of course, later on, Your Excellency, actually around 1950, in the 50s, is when Harambee House was actually put up over here. I'm very happy with the suggestion that all these arms of government can now come together to really concretize this Government Square. When we saw that ceremony, I think all presidents should be inaugurated here. And we hope in 2027, Your Excellency, we shall come for your inauguration at Government Square. And that I'll also walk across as the Governor of Nairobi at that point. Your Excellency, in 2015, I was a member of Parliament and chairman of the Committee on Equalization of Opportunities and National Cohesion. We had gone on a trip to New Zealand to look at the history of the Maoris and the Europeans, and also Australia, the Aborigines and the Europeans, to see how they were able to come together. On my flight back, I sat next to a gentleman called Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson, because now you have to have small talk. We met in the lounge and said hi, then we realized we share a name, Johnson. And so just small talk, he told me he has a friend who has invested heavily in Kenya. This friend of his had been in Russia, he had been in Europe, he had put in investment, it didn't work out. and he had run into trouble in Kenya. And so when this gentleman learned that I was a member of parliament, he told me, why don't you meet our friend and have a discussion to see how you can help him. Those days I was a bit powerful. I was the chairman of the ruling party, TNA, so I felt I could help him. This gentleman came to my office at KICC on the 26th floor. We had a cup of tea. He spoke about how Kenya is a great country, how we should market Kenya more. And then he finished and said, thank you, we'll see you. And I told him, I thought you have a problem with your, what was called a little investment. He sat back down and told me, if you look at the amount of money we've invested in Kenya, if you look at the risk we've taken, if I needed to know somebody to sort out my problem, I would not invest in Kenya. This country has a strong judiciary. This country has the rule of law. My matter is in court. I am sure it'll be adjudicated fairly. That gentleman, Your Excellency, is Steve Jennings, and his little investment is Tatu City. He did not want to know anyone, but he knew because we have a strong and firm judiciary, we have the rule of law, we have a court that can stop a presidential inauguration, and also a court that can quickly, swiftly, following the due course, swear in a deputy president. After other institutions have finished their work, Kenya is a destination for investment. He told me, Your Excellency, he told me that even if he was given free land in some of the neighboring countries because of diplomacy I shall not mention, even if he got free land, he would not move there. Because a change of regime would mean risk to his investment. I really want us to appreciate the judiciary of the Republic of Kenya. Because, Your Excellency, without them, this would not be a destination for investment. We congratulate you for the number of years that you've had. We have had ups and downs in this country, but everyone has always known that there will be objectivity in your findings. But your objectivity also must not mean popularity. It must mean just doing the right thing. I was thinking this morning when I came, what does it feel like to be a judge of the Supreme Court? I don't know, Emeritus Mutunga, how does it feel like? Chief Justice Maraga, it's almost a godlike, the finality of your decision. You know, I would draw you to one of the points by Khalil Gibran on punishment and crime. And he speaks to it, that must be exercised in a way that is judicious. Because ultimately, the ultimate judge is God. I really admire the judges of the Supreme Court that we have. You exemplify, you know, that attribute that this country must be. And even us in other arms of government, we look up to you. On behalf of governors, I thank you because you have stood for devolution. You have supported devolution in this country. I remember as a senator marching to court, we frog marched our speaker. He didn't want to go. He's now a governor, Lusaka, he's governor again. We told him, you must go. Because at that point, we felt devolution was under threat. The deputy president was also there, marching to the court, Professor Kindiki. But we found solace. And many times, the judgments will not be popular to us or acceptable, but they must be respected. And so I am happy that we have judges who are immune to popularity. You don't have to make a decision whether that is popular. Leave popularity to President William Ruto, Professor Kindiki, PCS, and ourselves. We are the ones who want to be popular with the people. But for you, just do what is right, as sober as a judge, and our country will remain solid. Your Excellency, with those many remarks, I know we've had a discussion about our favorite topic, which is the land over here, the Nairobi County land, that will soon host the Supreme Court building. I had mentioned that I have never been a client of the Supreme Court. I don't intend to be in my individual capacity soon, unless I vie for presidency one day, you never know. But in my individual capacity, no. And so I would not want to be out of favor with the Supreme Court. The land over here, you have pronounced yourselves, and the Constitution, Article 62 says all unalienated public land, as at the point of promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya, is vested with the NLC and with the county government. For us to do that proper allotment, following the procedures, to have a new Supreme Court building will be something that we'll all be proud of as a legacy of President William Ruto, myself, and the Chief Justice. So please count on our support. And also, Madam Chief Justice, you're the chair of our Nyumba Kumi over here, being the first resident. Please convene us once in a while. Convene your neighbors at City Hall, at Parliament, and at the Executive, even for a cup of tea. We'll be very happy to come. With those many remarks, Karibuni in Nairobi. I've been asked to welcome you to Nairobi, though I know all of you live in Nairobi. But I'm sure it feels nice to be welcomed by the governor of Nairobi every so often to your home. Asanteni sana and may God bless you.
Thank you very much, Governor Sakaja. It is now my pleasure to call on the Supreme Court Judge of Kenya, Judge, Honorable Lady Justice Njoki Ndung'u, to make some remarks. Tumpigie makofi akija tafadhali. Welcome.
His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, the Deputy President, Honorable Professor Kithure Kindiki, the Honorable Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, Lady Justice Martha Koome, Honorable Chief Justices of various jurisdictions, Deputy Chief Justice Lady Justice Philomena Mwilu, Prime Cabinet Secretary, Koome Mudavadi, the Governor of Nairobi County, brothers and sisters, judges, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to the Supreme Court at 12 Jurisprudential Conference. In early March this year, the judges of the Supreme Court of Kenya, during our annual retreat, realized that the time has come for us to engage the Kenyan public, including ordinary Kenyans, civil society groups, members of the bench, members of the bar, and academia, as well as state actors who are affected by our decisions in their work and in their lives. We also determined that we would engage our colleagues in other apex courts, both in the African region and globally, to assess our progress as a court and to ensure we remain on course as guardians of the Constitution. It has always been the rule of thumb, however, globally, that judges speak only through their judgments. However, in the contemporary world, judges often find themselves under intense scrutiny and criticism without a chance to respond or engage, even to clarify, if need be, the reasoning of their decisions. Traditionally, judges have had no platform from which to speak apart from the courtroom, from where, in an adversarial system of justice, at least one party leaves unhappy. This conference is therefore conceived by the desire to demystify the court's role and processes and to correct misconceptions about its mandate by deepening public understanding of the court. While judges are not infallible, in a democratic space, the public need to be afforded structured engagement where, from time to time, they can learn about what judges do, where they sit, when and how they do their work, and most importantly, why they do it. This is the reason we are all here today, and this week, to share, to engage, to learn, and to reflect. Your Excellency, allow me briefly to reminisce on the history of our Constitution and in particular the evolution of the independence of the judiciary. Kenya's constitutional journey to date has been a fairly long and tedious process, from the Independence Constitution and to numerous amendments to it in 1964, and many from 1969 to 1991, and later in 1997. Many of those early amendments, particularly those before 1991, changed the character and tenor of the Constitution. Judiciary estimates were considered not independently, but we were considered a department, like the Office of the Attorney General. The security of tenure of judges was removed, drastically and adversely affecting judicial outcomes, with judges being appointed and dismissed at will by the President, and calls would come in at night from political actors directing what judges should do the next day. These were dark times indeed. Thankfully, this is no longer the case. By 1990, Kenyans were demanding for change, including opening up of democratic space, respect for human rights, accountable state institutions, and independence of judges. Comprehensive constitutional review, however, only began in 2000 with the appointment of the Commission, the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, of which my brother Isaac Lenaola was a commissioner. That commission worked on a draft bill that was subject matter to the Constitutional Conference at Bomas of Kenya. Your Excellency, you will recall that in 2003, you were a member of the Parliamentary Select Committee on the Constitution. I believe that is where you and I first made acquaintance. And as members of Parliament, we were both delegates at the Bomas Conference, which adopted the CKRC draft bill in 2004. It is the CKRC draft that first made provision for Supreme Court. Similar provisions were contained in the document that went to referendum in 2005, but failed to meet the required threshold and was rejected. Kenya then went into the 2007 election without a popularly adopted constitutional framework, and as a result, in part, the election of 2007 precipitated a political crisis as never been seen before. As part of the resolution of the peace process that followed, the Committee of Experts on Constitutional Review, of which I was a member, was appointed to harmonize all the previous bills and drafts and to seek the views of Kenyans on contentious issues. And as a result, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was adopted by Kenyans through referendum. This Supreme Court was birthed by that Constitution, born out of the people's vision for an apex court that would stand as the ultimate guardian of the Constitution and as an impartial arbiter for the nation's most difficult legal challenges. The Constitution gives the court original jurisdiction relating to any challenge of a presidential election result, an advisory opinion to be given to government, an appeal from a judge that has been removed from office, and any challenge on the validity of the declaration of a state of emergency. Of these four original jurisdictions, Your Excellency, the only one we have never invoked is the one relating to a state of emergency. In addition, the court is bestowed with appellate jurisdiction to hear any appeals on the interpretation and application of the Constitution, and also in the instance where an appeal is a matter of general public importance. The inaugural bench of 7 judges of the Supreme Court were appointed in June 2011. I was one of them. 2 others, Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Justice Smoking Wanjala, are also still in office. We were later joined in order of appointment date by DCJ Rawal, CJ Maraga, DCJ Mwilu, Justice Lenaola, CJ Koome, and Justice Ouko. At this time, CJ Mutunga, DCJ Baraza, DCJ Rawal, Justice Philip Tunoi, Justice J.B. Ojwang have since retired. But going back to that inaugural bench, there were many challenges setting up a new court. When we first came here to report on duty, we found, as a totally new court, there were no offices for us to sit in, other than that of the Chief Justice, because even the Deputy Chief Justice was new. So we sat here and had a cup of tea in the CJ's office, and then we were asked to go home to wait until we were allocated temporary offices, a skeleton staff, and a courtroom. We had no rules of procedure, we had no practice directions, but there were already matters filed before us to get to work. And that we did. Over the last 12, now actually 13 years, the court has stood firm in its mandate, consistently asserting the principles of constitutional supremacy, sovereignty of the people of Kenya, and judicial independence. Challenges still, however, remain with regard to the principle of separation of powers, which guarantees judicial independence, particularly with regard to funding the judiciary as an equal arm of government, the attacks on judicial officers, and refusal to obey court orders. There is need, therefore, for checks and balances between the three arms of government without overreach or interference. Comity of the three arms of government is a cornerstone of our Constitution. Mutual respect is a necessary condition for the coexistence of the executive, legislature, and the judiciary, all who have one clear calling to serve the citizens of this great nation. Through landmark decisions, advisory opinions in moments of national impasse, and precedents, we have strengthened our democratic foundation, and I believe the Supreme Court has continually sought to ensure that justice prevails for all Kenyans. This conference offers an invaluable opportunity to reflect deeply on the court's journey and to consider its impact and future direction of its jurisprudence. We will examine the paths paved by our decisions on critical issues, including presidential election disputes, constitutional questions, human rights, devolution, and so much more. The range of conference activities include public lectures, panel discussions, moot courts, interactive exhibitions, and stakeholder engagements, where we seek to enrich understanding and encourage dialogue about the future of the Supreme Court. As we embark on this conference, may our discussions be rich and enlightening. May they inspire fresh perspectives and reinforce our shared resolve in upholding the values enshrined in our Constitution. I thank you all and welcome you all once again to the Supreme Court at 12 conference. Allow me at this time to welcome to the platform the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, Prime Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, and the Acting Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Interior, National Administration, His Excellency, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. Welcome.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable William Samoei Ruto, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, the Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome, esteemed judges present, and our Chief Justices Emeritus, Professor Willy Mutunga and Justice Maraga, distinguished participants, guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. When you have a privilege to speak to such an audience, you don't want to have anything that is off record. So I just thought I should make some very formal remarks. Since its establishment in 2010, the Supreme Court has been the final arbiter on issues of justice that go to the heart of our national conscience. The matters you discuss here today, from the traditions of apex courts to the nuanced balance of judicial independence and accountability, are central not only to your mandate, but to the very core of our democratic system. The Supreme Court is more than the apex court. It is the conscience of our Constitution. The Constitution of Kenya guarantees the independence of our three arms of government. Yet, while we are independent, we are not isolated. We are distinct, yet we are part of the same fabric that is Kenya. Our citizens do not separate us into the judiciary, executive, and legislature. They see only one government. And the expectation is for a government that works as a unified body to serve their interests their needs, and their aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, while the arms of government are independent, we serve the same citizens and the same republic, and as such, inevitably, all arms are interdependent. I urge each of us gathered here, within the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, to champion this spirit of interdependence in our approach to public service. As members of the judiciary, I also urge you to continue taking a firm stance against corruption. The Supreme Court has the power to set precedents and to reinforce the standards of integrity and fairness that echo through all sectors of our government. I appeal to all of us in public service to be beacons of honesty and transparency that our citizens look up to and expect. The Supreme Court is the keeper of the promise of democracy and justice. Every decision made here impacts not just today's Kenya, but the Kenya of generations to come. Today, we are on a journey together. The Supreme Court does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in a society to serve the society. The African proverb, which you all know, reminds us that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Let us be steadfast partners in building a just society, one where the rule of law protects every Kenyan and guarantees their rights and freedoms. As we continue in this partnership or interdependence, let us commit to strengthening our institutions, enhancing the capacity of our staff, and encouraging a renewed spirit of service to wananchi and for the national interest. This is our collective duty. Together, we can realize a more just, prosperous, and equitable Kenya. Thank you. I was told that I will now have the very rare opportunity to invite the Lady Chief Justice to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency President William Ruto, my lady, the Chief Justice, Mother Koome. Let me ride on the protocols because I see so many eminent persons here. But with the permission of the President, I could just mention, the AG was not mentioned. I think I didn't hear. AG is here, and DPP Renson Ingonga, AG Dorcas Oduor, and the leader of majority in the National Assembly, Kimani Ichung'wah, among other very senior and eminent persons present here. Your Excellency, because of time, allow me to say I'm happy to be here to celebrate what our Supreme Court has done for the last 12 years. And it's a good thing that our Supreme Court has decided to introspect and reflect even as they usher themselves into teenage. Because now they are 12, so they are entering teenage, and the responsibilities and the experiences of teenage will obviously visit their experience. And therefore, and that is on a light note, I'm very careful, Your Excellency, because I am an officer of the court. So I'm very careful what I say. I don't want to be accused later of saying that the Supreme Court is entering teenage in future. Your Excellency, allow me to say two quick things before I invite you. The first one is to appreciate what our Supreme Court has done to create formidable jurisprudence on major public interest issues and major public matters of public and national importance. In the short time the Supreme Court of Kenya has existed, the jurisprudence has been quite groundbreaking, and on that front I think it will be unfair for any assessor to actually fault the performance of the Supreme Court. To deliver the public good called justice, of course, the court has to do that through its jurisprudence and through the decisions they make. The court has also done very well in terms of the infrastructure, the software, the technology bit. And among the arms of government and the agencies of government, I think the judiciary is ahead of the rest of us. I remember my Lord Chief Justice Maraga when we were confronted with the predicament of COVID, issued certain rules, which we now call the Maraga rules, practice rules, which actually made justice, faster, more efficient, more convenient, even if we were all locked down by this public health emergency called COVID. And even after COVID lapsed, it appears that the way of the future in the administration of justice will be through the virtual courts and making sure we spend little time or as less time as possible in physical engagements in courtrooms. So again, on the issue of technology and the software for delivering the jurisprudence or delivering justice, the Supreme Court has done a good job. The only little thing where perhaps there is a need to make progress, and I've already heard from our leadership, the Chief Justice and the other speakers, progress is being made. I am also aware, Your Excellency, you chaired a high-level discussion around that subject matter, the issue of physical facilities for the court, because that's the area where perhaps the Supreme Court needs to make sure they have a modern physical infrastructure for delivering justice. And other than that, I think on a fair assessment, the court has done a good job. The second and last issue, Your Excellency, I want to mention is I have been wondering, even as I got to look at the subject matter of this conference, while the Supreme Court and the other courts, especially the High Court also, and the Court of Appeal, have helped us start developing crucial jurisprudence on important issues like public participation, like public interest, and how we handle the tensions between these broad interests with individual rights and freedoms, which are also powerfully protected in our Bill of Rights. I, as a student of law, I'll be interested to, going forward, hear or learn what the Supreme Court and the other superior courts will tell us about, beyond public interest, whether there are other higher interests. And I'm saying this with a bit of bias, Your Excellency, because it's in the public domain. I'm the immediate security minister for our country after you appointed me 2 years ago. And during those 2 years, I have had to ask myself whether the highest interest is the public interest, or there is a higher interest called the national interest. Because the public itself could hurt the national interest. And the Constitution talks about the national interest in two places, at the beginning and also in the chapter on national security. Other than the parameters and principles that the courts are helping us to understand about public interest, are there other higher values, primordial, existential fundamental principles which are crucial to the existence of Kenya. Because the public can be mobilized or can mobilize itself to do the wrong things that threaten the existence of the state. And therefore, that is the next frontier of jurisprudence I would invite us to start thinking about, and the Supreme Court can help us in that regard. And very finally, I think the Chief Justice and the other speakers have ably brought out how we minimize the tensions between independence of the arms of government and the interdependence of the arms of government. That tension needs to be cleaned up a bit so that we do not hurt the four aspects of independence, especially for the judiciary: operational independence, administrative independence, financial independence, and decisional independence. Beyond those four pillars of independence, there's a lot of interdependence, there's a lot of relationships that be nurtured in a healthy manner without impairing the pedestal or without interfering with the place where the judiciary sits, so that the nation and the state can continue to exist. Sorry, Your Excellency, nimesema mengi kidogo. And with those remarks, Your Excellency, I now want to ask all colleagues if we can be upstanding as we invite His Excellency the President to address us. Asante sana. Welcome, Mr. President.